Great. So the recording has started. Again, without further ado, just a reminder, I'm going to turn it over to our instructor, Jay Anders. But if you have any questions, raise your hand. I will be monitoring the chat to make sure that we capture all of those. But it's our preference that if you want to be, of course, part of the conversation, just raise your hand. Use your camera if you can to be a part of that conversation. And with that, I'll turn it over to our instructor, Jay Anders.
All right. Well, the great things everybody should notice is we're a little bit of ahead of schedule. That works out great. We'll probably ramble at times and gives us plenty of time to talk about stuff. One thing I did mention, I'm having some slight technical issues. So as I transition over to slide deck, Jose, I'm going to have to ask you to tell me when I am in fact sharing, or if I am in fact sharing. I'm going to start off probably sharing one screen here. Then I'll go into my presentation mode and
We'll do.
hopefully everybody will see that. Like I say, I'm kind of a screen down, so you'll have to work with me while I sort some of this out. I think that's the screen I want to go to. And then I'm going to come over here from the beginning.
Perfect.
All
We
right,
can
my
see your
friend, am
screen.
I sharing correctly, Jose?
Yes, sir. Everything looks crystal clear on our side.
Wonderful. Well, again, welcome everyone. Really, it's neat to hear about everybody's background a little bit. We've done this a couple of times. I think this is my third time teaching the class sort of in this environment. Let me just say, I really enjoy teaching a class when there's people in the room. This morning, I was my students unfortunately were given an exam, but it was still nice to have people in the room. Because they always like to come and ask me different questions when you're given an exam, and I would have thought by their junior year in school they'd realize all I tell them is what's on the paper. But today we're going to go well beyond that. I was really excited to hear so many of you say, hey, and I'm claiming this in my category. If you said all, it tells me you want to hear more about the equipment and the plants and maybe the overview. But several of you did, in fact, mention just the equipment was something you really want to learn a bit more about. And we're actually going to get into that discussion a little bit today. My background is, of course, in the electrical engineering side of the house, and that's what I've pretty much done my entire career in the hydro side via at the Tennessee Valley Authority when I first started working in industry. And even beyond that, working for different clients clear across the country. So looking forward to sharing. I will do the electrical equipment today, a part of this introductory module. With my buddy Jim, who has more of a civil mechanical background in your next module, he'll be the one to talk a lot more about that. But anyway, great for everybody's here today and really looking forward to, like I say, just going through a little bit of an introduction to hydro, going through all of our overview of the entire class. We'll look at module one from an overview standpoint, and then we'll break down into it, sort of following the basic agenda you have presented there before you. Like I say, I'm struggling with, guys, you're always used to multiple screens, and today I'm just not quite there. So you're all going to work with me, show me a little grace. There we go. So again, our introduction. So this is what we've already done. You guys got a chance to talk and visit with one another, and I would encourage that, right? You guys will be taking several of these modules, about 8 different modules over the next several months, and so just interacting, learning from one another. All of you, man. I was listening to everybody talking about whether we had dam safety people on the call, people dealing with markets, project managers, maintenance folks, power forecasting, several and just the spoke about, electrical engineers via mechanical engineers. I think I may have already said dam safety, but you guys have a lot of experience too. The last thing I claim to know is everything. Now, my buddy Jose, he can probably claim to know everything. He knows a great deal also. So again, we're just looking forward to getting input and talking with all of you. And so, like I say, we have the little chat box for the introverts in the crowd. You can type in your comment, and Jose's monitoring that. And he'll tap the brakes and let me know that, hey Jay, here's a question over here, or just raise your hand. In the virtual world of raising your hand, as goofy as that is, but still do that. Let us know you want to talk with us. So we really are encouraging that a great deal. As he noted, the breaks are are written in stone. So if you have a meeting out there you schedule during that time, don't worry about it. We are definitely going to be pausing during those moments in time so you can go get on that. And we understand people have to come and go, but through the course of the day. But still, more than anything, just looking for that engagement. Looking at just the course in general, very high level. And I say the course, this is your next 8 months. This is the overview of the whole thing. Today we're talking water to wires, and this is really an overview. We'll start looking at the reservoirs themselves. What do we mean when we say reservoir? What do we mean when we talk about a peaking plant or a run of river or a pump storage plant, a conventional hydro plant? We'll make it real clear what all those are. We'll get to a lot of the basic components inside of a powerhouse. The dam itself, from the dam clear to the transmission lines. We'll kind of point this out with various drawings, different things like that. We'll kind of talk about them, give a basic function of what they're actually doing for us. Well, by the end of today, I think you're really going to have a solid foundation on what's at a hydro plant, different types of hydro plants, and we'll talk through all of that. The next module, and really we get into it a little bit today, is the equipment engineering, the technology side of it. We'll actually break down sort of the electrical, the mechanical, and the civil engineering aspects of a hydro plant. And we'll drill down. Today, I will talk about them in a very high level sense. But once we get together, we can have several hours to talk about those different elements. We give a lot more information. So again, today though, really just the introduction, and then on the electrical side, as I noted earlier, I'll drill down into that a lot more, and hopefully give you a more appreciation when we start talking about power and energy and watts and volts and amps and ohms and kind of how all that works together, excitation systems, governor systems, the generator itself, how's that start working? We talk about transmission lines and the idea of step up transformers and all these things, even the controls and the protection side of it. We'll point out what's going on there a little bit too, so you have a good understanding. Our next module you get into is more the environmental side of it, and that really goes into a great deal. Betsy, who teaches that, really goes into a lot of detail. There's a lot of environmental laws, as some of you may know, and to those that you that don't know, you'll see what that gets into also. There's just a lot of things we have to comply with in the hydro space, and it almost runs contrary. I hear people talk about the Clean Water Act and how we in the hydro world are trying to get away from that. I think people are this. It's very nuanced when people talk about the environmental side in hydro plants. I can tell you that over my 30 plus years of working in the industry, we have become so much more sensitive to the environmental side of the house. And in that discussion that Betsy leads with us, you'll really have, I think, a much greater appreciation for the constraints we have on us and the links that we go to be sensitive to the environment. License and compliance. We have a real comedian that leads that section for us, my buddy Tim. Again, long time, hydro guy. Focused, he was at FERC for a while. He was working with our hydros side at DOE for a while. So has a great appreciation for that whole licensing and compliance. Some of us, whine about that a little bit, probably for good reason. Sometimes I think we all think it takes an awful long time to get a hydro plant licensed and all the compliance aspects that we have to go to keep our license. But Tim, really walks us through that and boils that down so everybody can have a really good appreciation for it. And not only appreciation, we have a great understanding of it. I mean, it really goes into a lot of depth there. And I know, I think there's a few people today that mentioned that was something they were particularly interested about. And like I say, Tim really does a great job there. We look at production planning, water management side of the house. Clearly, that's our fuel. Without it, we don't generate. And so we really do a great deal on how we actually project. Hey, look, this is when the water's coming. We have these great models we can look at from all past times. It's interesting, different parts of the country, right? Here where I am in the Southeast, I should have mentioned it. I live here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hence, obviously might work with Tennessee Valley Authority. But we got here where I live, it's just constantly battling those flood conditions. We get a lot of rain here in the southeast, especially Tennessee where I live, near the mountains and everything. You go out west, they're in a drought, but they've got all that snow up in the mountains. So out west, they're trying to prevent a drought and do some hydrogeneration. Here, we're trying to prevent a flood and do hydrogeneration. So there's really some unique things geographically based. We had it's all these hydro plants are all running in these very different environments, but still trying to maximize the use of our fuel, water, and obviously at the same time get a lot of generation. The market side is an interesting one for me. Obviously we never used to have the hydro market, but yet over the last several years, it's something that's more and more pressing. We always used to just put our power out there, just sell it. And on the hydro side, we're really trying to say, hey, look, there are certain value streams there that are much more valuable that need to be properly evaluated in the marketplace. We have a markets committee in the NHA world. I'd encourage you again, I'm several notes I wrote down here, people talking about wanting to learn more about markets. I would take the plug and say NHA has a complete committee. That's all they're doing. So get engaged with that. Kate can certainly get you in contact with the folks at NHA to have that discussion and get you more engaged there. But again, it's a continual evolving, growing aspect of NHA, of the hydropower space. So an awful lot going on there. Now, dam safety, we'll talk about that a little bit today, but then we have some outstanding individual that comes on and talks about dam safety in a great degree. Now, most of us, that were engaged in the hydro space, dam safety is always pretty much a paramount thing. I mean, again, my background was on the electrical side of the house, but even that, there were many things we were having to do to support the dam safety side. So you have an entire module that helps everybody understand when we say dam safety, what does it mean? And though we can go clear back to some of those incredibly terrible stories of whether it be St. Francis out in California, or the Johnstown up in Pennsylvania, or the Tetons out in the Northwest. There's unfortunately a long list of let's just call them boo-boos, in the dam safety realm that we had to learn a lot from. There's some painful lessons. A lot of people lost their lives to bring about the evolution of dam safety. But today it's really super super important. The great thing is all of our hydropower plants, they have an incredible track record. I wish I could say all the dams out there have that same track record, but they don't. And you can do the math on that. You think about the number of dams here in North America, a little over 90,000 dams in North America. And if you're scratching your head saying, well, how many of those actually generate hydropower? Well, you think about it for a second, but the number's less than 3,000. So you have 90,000 dams out there that are all, hopefully most of them, unless you're in one state we'll talk about later maybe, that actually has dam safety programs. All the states except one have a dam safety program. You guys will learn about all of that, but realize when it comes to hydropower production, we're a small piece of all of those dams. The last topic we get into is the asset management side of the house. And though that is a class by itself almost, right? Really learning about how you'll do all that maintenance, how you can schedule it, how you incorporate it. Again, I was fortunate enough to see this stuff come up from the ground zero. We at TVA, we really didn't have it. It was very time-based management system when it comes to preventive maintenance. And really have gone away from that to really more holistically looking at how do we manage and how do we schedule our maintenance, how do we improve our reliability. So there's an awful lot going on there. And what I guess say we have this whole module that's going to focus a great deal on it. So again, the great thing is we're not connecting you guys to a fire hose. One thing I'd be curious about, and again, I don't have all the TV screens here looking at everybody's faces and hands and everything, but if everybody just put in the chat, if you attended the 8-hour overview class that we offered, I think whether at a clean current events or when we're in DC. If you could just put a note in, I'd just be curious how many or if anyone attended our 8 hour overview class. That would be meaningful to me. Or maybe you've just, because I say those classes, it was drinking from a fire hose. We were trying to talk about all these 8 topics I just went over with you. Everybody had 1 hour to go over that topic. And though it was done, I think we did a great job with it. It was a lot of information in 1 hour. You think about what I'm going to do here today. Imagine hearing a lot of that in a 1 hour time frame. So, Jose, has anybody indicated they did the eight
Yeah,
hour
no,
class?
yeah, Jay, we just have a few folks that have, one individual has identified Dylan, attended in 2024 Clean Currents. Um, Portland, if I remember correctly, was 2024. But most have not actually. So it's really it's good that they're participating in this class, as you alluded to, and great overview, by the way. Although you're focus on water wires. You did a great overview of everything that they'll be seeing. And when we compare these 8 months versus, of course, 8 hours, we're just going to be able to have a much deeper dialogue on every single one of these very complicated, very important topics. So, thank you for that overview. But it looks like most folks um, have not taken the 8 hours, so they're going to benefit, of course, of having the much deeper time spending with people like yourselves talking about all these key topics.
Great. All right. Well, hey, yeah, to those of you that attended the 8 hour class, welcome back. Really glad you're here. Hopefully, you find this beneficial. And again, I shamelessly will plug NHA. I mean, I think it's great that we do this class, the 1 day class, and then this one where we go into much more detail. So, as you learn and benefit from it, help us get the word out. That's the big thing we're trying to do is just educate people in the industry where we can. New folks maybe in your organization that are coming in. We do this a couple times a year, a couple different ways, whether it be the in-person or this more in-depth class, doing so we do it here. So just encourage you, help us keep getting the word out. So thanks for that. Well, what I want to sort of transition to now is just kind of a quick overview on what we are going to be doing here in the water to wires class. A few different slides. Some of them may appear to be a bit repetitious. Bear with me. We will again just paint a picture so you can see where we're going to be going over the next several hours today. Well, I'm clicking buttons. There we go. So anyway, where we want to start off, again, this is just the lesson that we're learning about here today. One thing we go into is a little bit of the history of it, and you'll see, hey, water power's been around a long time. Hydropower specifically has been around a very, very long time. We're going to get into some of the core concepts of hydropower itself, really what makes it work. It's really pretty simple. You just need a difference in elevation and you need some water. And you need some smart people over time that figured out how to harness that water. And we're going to go into that. We're going to show you what that looks like. Some real simple calculations. You won't need a calculator, no calculus involved here today. I do think we do show out a bit of a gradient divergent. We'll talk a little bit on the electrical engineering side when we get into that section. Though I promise we won't do any deep study there, but again, I want you to see where some of the basics come from. I'm going to talk about the types of hydropower plants, how they operate, how they interface with the grid. Really getting into that a whole lot. And again, so we talk about those run of rivers. We talk about conventional places. We talk about pump storage plants. We talk about MHK side of the house, the marine hydrokinetics. Again, just so you really have a much deeper understanding of those. We get into my electrical side of the house. We're going to talk about some of the protection and controls, how we do that at hydro plants, and sort of the evolution there. It's amazing. Not that our hydro plants are looking like NASA nowadays, but nonetheless, the computers have totally taken over there. I was out at TVA's Raccoon Mountain pump storage plant a few weeks ago. It was really, really amazing to look and see how they're operating that plant nowadays. And then, of course, at the end of the day, we look at water power to electrical power. We're obviously we got all this water flowing. how do we turn water into electrons? So we have a big screen out there in the middle of the river. We're just sort of, sucking the electrons out of the water. Of course, that's not the case. But again, we'll dive into that a good bit and have a really good understanding of exactly how that process occurs. This slide here, again, just a bit of a repeat that I'm talking about, how we're going to go and what we're going to look at here in module one. Like I said, one of the biggest things I'd say is just all those components of a hydro plant. I want you guys walking away today really knowing what that looks like. And again, have an appreciation for how hydropower supports the grid. What do we look like? When I say supports the grid, certainly the grid stability side of it, but the generation side of it, the storage side of it, there's a lot of neat things that hydropower plays onto the grid, how it contributes. It's been around so long, I think it's people have lost the appreciation for it. And that's one thing at NHA, we're trying to say, hey, look, we have been around a long time, but we're still relevant, we're still powerful, we still make a difference. And hopefully you'll see that by the end of our talks today. Some of our real objectives I can talk about. Some of the main things here is the history, look at some of the core components, different types of plants, and then even ultimately we're going to look at some layouts of a complete river system. Not that I'm biased, but I'm just sort of more informed. So I'm going to really go into the TVA's river system. But again, just so you can see that when we're controlling a river system, all these different things we talk about today do come into play. Vice if you just had, one hydro plant out there that you were dealing with. Sort of the learning outcomes side of the house we'll talk about. Again, going back into this understanding of how it is in the United States, but also looking at it globally, looking at our role in the energy mix for the whole United States, how that is important. Also, the flowing head. When we talk about that, these sometimes it's just words that we spout out with those folks that do this all the time, but really want you to understand what that really looks like. The basic components of the powerhouse, we'll make it real clear. What is a penstock? What is a turbine runner? When we say the scroll case, what are we really talking about? I want you all to know exactly what that is. Different types of hydro plants, characteristics of those. We'll get into that a good deal also. And then ultimately, those various hydro projects out there, what is it when it comes to managing the grid, getting things out on the grid? We'll talk about that a good deal also. So one thing I have to point out again, before I really get going in some of our topics is we're running a little bit ahead, which is just perfect. I say that because my next slide says we're on a break. Well, guess what? We'll buzz right by that, but we will make really good use of our time here. Our break will, as we said, those will be as defined on the agenda, and I'll let Jose rope us in at the appropriate times. So now a little
thank you,
bit.
Jay. If I may just jump in here,
Yeah,
and which is
sure.
incredibly important, and I would agree with you undoubtedly. Being ahead of schedule is good because as we get into some of these topics, what we have found and what I assume will always happen in classes like this, the folks will have questions, right? Folks will have comments, and that'll just give us more of an opportunity to have that rich discussion. The other thing that is important to for those of you as part of this, what you'll find is, Jay's going to walk us through everything that he just articulated from the fundamentals. What is a penstock, just to kind of capture something that said, what is a runner, etc. Recognizing that some of you have been in hydropower plants, and maybe some of you have not been inside a hydro plant. It's important that we all build this foundation together. And so as we go through all of the different discussions, not only today, these different modules, this whole entire story of hydro kind of comes together from a common foundation. And I think that's incredibly, incredibly important. So Jay, I think it's great that we're able to do this. This is some of the luxury that we have in this course, this 8-month course, kind of versus the overview, right? Where, as you alluded to, drinking from the fire hose, I guess you could say drinking from a penstock. We should maybe change it just to kind of put it all together. But again, we hope all of you will go on this journey with us throughout. Again, recognizing that some of you have been a part of this industry for a while. Some of you have visited facilities, etc. What I'd like to do, Jay, just because we are ahead of time, I like what you did with the question earlier, like how many have taken the overview. I'm just kind of curious if folks can actually put in the chat as well. How many of you have not been inside a physical hydropower plant? That will also be good for us to know, because as we kind of go through this, we'll help calibrate ourselves in the level of detail that we have on this very important foundational equipment. What I don't want to happen is that we leave somebody behind, right? And we don't have the luxury to be in a classroom together where we can kind of see when people are kind of like either confused and so forth, especially in today's in a modern virtual era. So just let us know if you've never been in a hydropower plant. That's not embarrassing in any way, shape, or form, or so forth, but it'll allow us to really know how we can support all of you in this learning journey that we have together. So, Jay, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to pipe in and kind of put that out there. And I think that with that, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm glad again, we're just chiming in here. It's a discussion, and that's how we want everybody to view it. So I'm very hopeful that everybody continues to do that. It would be curious, Jose, have we had anybody pipe in? Do we have anybody in the group that has not been inside a hydropower plant?
I'm not seeing any. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll see if folks respond. I should have asked the easier question, right? Who has been in a power plant? But I think I chose the harder one on purpose. I did see a hand go up and come back down. Just wanted to clarify, and it happened quickly, so I didn't pick up who. Did anybody have a question? Sharif.
I never been in one ever.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Well, that's
Yeah.
well, good. So, Sharif, as we're going through this, Jay alluded to some terminology. He will undoubtedly explain the terminology as we kind of walk through this, so you'll see that. But for yourself, and of course anybody else, there is no wrong question here. I guess we all should have said that, right? Everything is fair game. Again, I think it's critically important that we all leave with the right foundation, because these topics all are interrelated in some way,
Yeah,
shape, or form. So
for sure.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I remember the first hydro plant I went to. As Jose alluded to, I spent about 8 years in the Navy before starting with the Tennessee Valley Authority. And, as Navy nuke, working in the nuclear environment, very process oriented, very procedure oriented. You didn't touch anything without purpose and without knowledge. And, you whatever you're doing in any operations, it was just you had the procedure out in front of you and you're following it very, very clearly. And so I go out to this very first power plant. It was me, a senior engineer, and another young engineer like myself, and we go out there. And there was this operator doing something, outside of the plant. We pull up there, and he knew that the senior person was with us, and he yells over at this young lady that was with me. He says, "Hey, can you open that valve right there?" And first off, I'm thinking, "Oh, that's odd." And so she's like kind of confused, but wanting to help the guy out. So she says, "Yeah, yeah, sure." And she starts opening this valve, and the guy's like, "No, no, no, not that one, not that one." And I'm thinking, "Oh my!" I'm thinking, we're going to trip the reactor here or something. But what I quickly learned is the hydrospace. It is a very relaxed space. We've certainly become more regulated, more rule oriented, more process oriented. But it was very shocking to me the very first time. I remember like it was yesterday. And we did go. We went inside the plant, checked things out, and no one died or anything else. There was no ill things created by the opening of this wrong valve and shutting it and opening the correct valve. But yeah, it was just a memory Jose sparked as he talked about, that going to a hydro plant. I remember the first time I'd ever visited one. So speaking of hydro plants,
And also, Jay, sorry, just
yeah, go ahead.
and of course, this dialogue is rich, and I don't want to do this to you all the time. You mentioned this, I think, lightly. For those that haven't been to a hydropower plant, chances are you will never be to two identical ones. They're all very, very different. And these components that Jay's going to walk us through, more than likely, and I say more than likely because there's run of river, there's all kinds of permutation, but um, they all look very different, and that makes Hydro very unique in size, in vintage, in equipment being used, in an implementation approach, etc. But what I have found, again, for those of you that haven't been to, many of the facilities, if not most, it's always difficult to say all. These owners, these operators take a lot of pride in their facilities. Even if they're 100 years old, these facilities are amazing in their own right, and there's a lot of pride that is taken in many of these facilities. So again, I promise not to interrupt you anymore, Jay, but I'm really looking forward to as you share and as we learn as we spend the next 8 months together.
Yeah, and again, you never need of an apology, Jose. I appreciate the fact that you're chiming in and allow me to take a breath, but also sharing some great thoughts. So now my first question to everyone in the group. I don't know, we'll give a quarter. All right, so this is the hydropower plant right there. And so my answer, or first question to the group for the day is, again, class participation, wake up, everybody. What hydropower plant is this? Jose, you don't get an answer, and nor do you, Kate. So what plant do you think this is? There's some real clues here to help folks out if you just look around this picture. But feel free, put it in chat, yell it out loud. I don't care. We can talk away here. So what plant is this?
Somebody said something and was awfully quickly. Who was that?
Nah, I just said Run a River, but somebody beat me to it in the chat.
Danielle put in it said Run a River.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
is Bonneville?
no, it's not Bonneville, and it is not a Run a River facility. This is a conventional one with a lot of water behind it. For
There's a
those of
raised
you
hand
into
by Jakob.
geography, look at this. This may help some of you. Right there where my little cursor is. Maybe that'll help you geographically get centered where this place may be in the world. Could be
Might
my
be-
own bias.
Might be John Day. I don't know.
Yeah, this is if you look at the shape of this mountain and these Civil War buffs, this is Lookout Mountain right here on the horizon. Chattanooga right here at the base of the mountain. This facility is just upstream of Chattanooga.
You have two folks that have put one of TVA's facilities on the comments.
It is a TVA facility. It's the Chickamauga Hydro Plant. I'll just kill the anticipation of all the crowd. It's Chickamauga Hydro Plant. This hydropower plant and dam has single-handedly paid for the Tennessee Valley being erected. And why I say that is Chattanooga is a bowl, and you can almost see that in the picture. You got this mountain here, you got this mountain range over here, and you can see this is a bit of a valley. Almost every year, as long as history went back into the 1800s, Chattanooga would flood every year. And when I say flood, I don't mean a couple inches, I mean feet upon feet. And so it was really quite susceptible to flooding. Now with Chickamauga Dam here, Nickajack Dam is several miles down the river, and we control the flow of water through Chattanooga. Since TVA has been in place, we've had minimal flooding in parts of Chattanooga. There are parts of Chattanooga that do now still occasionally flood. We have a couple other creeks that go through town, and so those back up, and those gives us some grief. But nonetheless, with this hydropower plant and dam, it really saves TVA, saves the state of Tennessee and all the various cities and municipalities along the way, just billions of dollars. I forget what the figure was for this year alone. We had some incredible flooding potential, right? But again, I think this year the number may approach $1 billion just this year alone in adverted damage, right? With this here, we did not have the damage. So this right here is where the powerhouse itself is. You can see it's more of a complete facility. This are all the spillway gates. And again, we'll get into this, and I'll be somewhat repetitious today, so we make sure we walk away with it. These are all our spillway gates along here. They allow water to pass so we can, in fact, get the, sort of control that flooding. Right here, you see, we actually have a project going in. This is a new lock structure. This structure started in the design phase back in the early 90s. I actually we bring power over from the powerhouse that goes through the dam. I actually did the project, put new transformers over here at the lock and new cables going across to power this thing back in about 1995.
Wow.
The efficiency of our government, the way we allocate funds and congressional allocations, here we are still today. What is it, 2025? And this lock is still not in operation, though it's been slowly getting pieced together for almost 30 years now. So,
Jay, you have a question by Kyle?
Yeah, hey, you're touching on this a little bit with TVA, and having done my research from University of Tennessee, I'm somewhat familiar with TVA, and I know they have a lot of different requirements for their dams in terms of a hierarchy of providing flood control, providing recreation, providing hydropower. Can you talk a little bit to how they balance that in terms of cannot provide hydro if cannot perform flood control, or cannot provide hydro if cannot provide recreation levels of certain lakes and that sort of thing? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. The biggest thing at the TVA, flood control is the number one thing. The hydropower, hey, look, they would always love to have hydropower being generated, but we acquiesce. You go back to the TVA Act, and the TVA Act dictates why these facilities are here, and it centers on dam safety, flood control, but some other key ones, navigation. That also is a key thing. But during a flood event, all the barges that are trying to come up, they pull over, they tie off, and they wait for the velocity of the river to slow down to it's a safe condition for them, or they're not, spending all that fuel trying to come up river under those high flow conditions. But really, it's flood control. That is the number one main thing. Then we go to navigation. You go to power generation. We also have an economic component to what TVA is responsible for. And then all the shoreline management. That's another key thing. It's interesting. TVA, they don't own the locks. Well, that's just it. The locks are connected to their dams, but the Corps of Engineer actually operates those locks and is in charge of navigation. But they work very closely with TVA as far as the generation we have and the amount of water we have coming out of the facilities, because TVA is 100% in charge of that. Now, one thing, Kyle, I think you were alluding to is on the idea of recreation. Especially if you go out to the Ocoee River, some places like that where we have a lot of rafting that occurs and everything. TVA has got into various commercial agreements with these rafters. Instead of providing generation, we actually will spill the water, and TVA gets slightly compensated for that water so we can have those recreational releases. And I'll talk about that more later today when we get into looking at those broad overall river systems. Am I answering your question at all?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate you asking. Yeah, so as I was noting, this facility right outside of Chattanooga. It's probably about, less than a half hour from my house. Beautiful river flowing right through the center of Chattanooga, and really one of many of, obviously, this is being the Tennessee River, and we have several other main rivers that feed this. So just giving it a little bit of history as we're getting started about our day here. So on the introduction side of the house, when we talk about hydropower, some of the big things we all say, hey, look, we are clean, we are renewable. It is this domestic energy source. It's our oldest form of renewable energy here in America. We have to stress that because a lot of people, they forget that hydropower's been around so long. What I love about this map, This represents all the different types of hydropower and other types of generation clear all around our great country. We're looking at all of our hydro plants. And I want to see something here. Yeah, this takes it into the different sizes of the plants and everything. Realize the federal government, right? They have the biggest plants. Did I say the federal government? I should say government in general. You know, out there in the Northwest, there's a lot of the PUDs have some very large facilities. You can start looking out here. So I think what's interesting, we talk in 2023, you can see how much electricity we were putting out there on the marketplace, quite a bit. So Kate, if I don't think I had this question for you, so this may be one we have to go into the chat, but I want to ask you guys, you know, looking at our map here, thinking about the United States, how many states do you believe do not have hydropower? How many states do not have hydropower? That'd be my first question to the group. Feel free to shout it out. This would be a good one to have a Menti thing in the future, Kate.
I agree. And I'm assuming I can't answer either, Jay. I'm joking.
No, you can't answer anything. You are allowed to answer no questions.
All right.
Yeah.
So how many
you can ask questions, but you can't answer.
So you can take the answer either way. Correct me, Jay. You can take how many states have hydropower or how many states don't. We'll get to the same number either way. So
yeah, I just don't want to stress people out and then have to remember how many states there are in America and all that stuff.
Fair. We have two responses.
Okay.
One says 1,
okay,
and the other says 2. States that do not have hydropower, and we're starting to get thumbs up from people onto those answers. But those are the 2 responses so far.
Okay.
Want to give everybody another 30 seconds, Jay?
30 seconds. Okay. Well, you'll have to tell us one of your childhood stories while we get through the next 30 seconds.
We don't. All right. So I may just stop the clock on that. Somebody responded. They added the states that they believe do not have hydropower to the list as Alaska and Hawaii. So that's what we have so far. And I say Jay, why don't you share with the team here your thoughts on their responses?
Sure. All right. The answer is 2. The correct answer is 2 states that do not have hydropower. And let me say, my buddy Duff Mitchell would be very sad to hear somebody say Alaska does not have hydropower. Alaska has a great deal of hydropower, and probably, I'm going to say, the only state that has potential. I say potential because it's political potential, not technical potential, to have a significant amount added in the near future. But the 2 states are, and I don't know if people were chiming in on that. Sounds like we said Alaska and Hawaii. I would have to say, no, actually, Hawaii has pump storage facility. And I think they could have some really good micro hydro too, but they don't. But they do have a pump storage facility in the process of getting built right now. Alaska has several hundred megawatts of capacity. But anybody else chimed in on the other 2 states?
The only other state that I have here mentioned is Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Oh, that's a good guess. It's wrong, but it's a good guess. The other 2 states and really weird ones. One of them's really weird. One of them you could say, oh yeah, sure, that's it. Delaware. Sure, Delaware's too small to have a hydro plant, right? It would be. It's so small. It's like, I don't know. The other one is, and this is a weird one, Mississippi. Can you believe that? The Mississippi River flows right through there. Lots of water. But what are the 2 things I said you had to have? You got to have a change in elevation. Mississippi does not have much elevation. There is an Army Corps of Engineer facility there that people, we talk about, called non-power dams. There is a non-power dam there that has the potential to have a hydro plant at it, probably 20 megawatts tops. But it'll be neat to get that added in Mississippi. Then we'd only have 1 state that doesn't have it. It's economics is why it's not there. It technically, everything about it is fine for it to be there right now. It's just selling into a particular power market. You think where that Mississippi is, you think about gas and other forms of production, that hydro plant just cannot quite meet the requirements. So that's why we've got it. We got it on paper, but not in actual practice down there in Mississippi yet. So yeah, that's the two places, Delaware and Mississippi. So again, Kate, well, I've got to add those in my Minto thing for my next time out. I think that would be great. Um, well, that's just a little bit of the overview. You can see across our great country, hydropower, like I say, every state but two. So no matter where you live, unless you're in Mississippi, right here, right there, kind of between the marks, or up here in Delaware, you, anywhere else, you've got hydro in your state. So let's talk a little bit about the history side of stuff. When it comes to hydropower, and I'm just talking water power in general, right? Not the actual generation of electricity. Certainly, that's where it ultimately goes to. But hydropower is being used really since our world's almost come into existence. We've had people using it to, crush grain, cut wood, all the mills where they made clothes up in the Northeast. I mean, we've used electricity, excuse me, use hydropower to do a bunch of great things. But really, starting in the mid 1700s, early 1800s, we started realizing, hey, look, there's other things we can do for this. People started coming up with this idea of how we can actually start to harness the water a little bit better. It started over in Europe. We had some great engineers come up with some things over there. And then over here in the US, we had Mr. Francis came along. We come into our Francis turbines, and then we get into our Pelton turbines. And we in these different type of turbines, I'll show some of them later on. We have what we call propeller turbines, reaction turbines, our Francis turbines, all these different types of ways. And a lot of it came down to, well, how much head are you trying to overcome, in the sense of, hey, if you have really, really high head, we go into more of these reaction turbines, what we call the Pelton turbines. And then if you have kind of a lower head, I say we'll call it a medium head, a medium elevation change. That was really the Francis. The Francis, a really wide range of operation, and I'll mention it a little bit more today and show some pictures of it. My buddy Jim will go into that a lot more. And then, we've got sort of the Kaplan turbine was really one of that intermediate. We had a lot of those when you have really, really high flow, lots of water, but maybe not a lot of elevation change. That's where the Kaplan turbine really came into play, especially if you had a varying elevation. Because with a Kaplan turbine, we'll talk about this, you actually change the pitch of it. If you have any pilots here on the call today, and much like that variable prop, you feather that prop certain ways. It's the same idea in the water side of the house. So really in the late 1800s, things started really being able to take shape. You think about the Industrial Revolution, we had a lot going on in hydropower, i.e., up in the Northeast, especially up in Lowell here in our country. But we really started coming along, and we started having actual electric generation starting. It started over in England. They had a plant over there. It fired up one light bulb, and then we came over here to up in, I think, in the Wisconsin and Michigan area. We had a lot of dams up in that area. Again, because a lot of the sawmills were up there. So they were doing all this sawmills, and they started realizing, hey, we already got the dam here. We've got this water here. And they started bringing in the idea of this electric generation. One of the oldest plants still in operation up in Whiting, Wisconsin, the Whiting plant, well over 30 years, something that's been around. So really a lot going on. Now again, you look at here in the U.S., especially around that time of World War II, we had a tremendous amount of the large dam construction. A lot of it was, we had a lot of people needing jobs, right? And so we had the New Deal for here where I live in the Tennessee region. So we had a lot of dams getting built here, a lot of the ones out west, a lot of the public utilities out west, building their large dams, the Hoovers, the Grand Coulees, all those systems really were getting built, by our governments in all through the early and mid 1900s. Jose was talking earlier about, hey, if you've been to one hydro plant, you've pretty much seen, well, one hydro plant. And a great example of that is TVA has two particular dams. It's Cherokee and Douglas. Cherokee and Douglas were built to really supply electricity to the smelters that were making aluminum in the 40s. Of course, we were making aluminum in the 40s to make airplanes, and we were making airplanes to go in, well, yeah, World War II, you get it. So we had those two plants, and the geography was so similar up there in Northeast Tennessee where these two plants are. And so they built them as sister plants. And I tell you what, you go inside of those two plants, and you do at times have to take a double take. They're one of the few places that I've been where you have two plants that are just so very similar. But even with that, they do have their slight differences. And you get it. It's all about that geography, right? But those two plants are both 4-unit plants. Each one of the units have about 40 megawatts each. So, you have like 160, 170 megawatts coming out of each one of those plants. So pretty significant. Chickamauga plant that I showed there at the beginning with you, same deal. That was a big 4-unit plant right on the main stem of the Tennessee. And each one of those units still around 40 megawatts. So pretty significant. Real quickly, 160 watts, I don't try to disparage any of the other generations out there, but getting 160 megawatts on that small of a footprint, pretty handy. Not to mention all the other wonderful benefits. So that's a little bit of the history, just to give a little bit of an overview of hydropower. We think of where we are today. Like I said, we have just thousands of dams across the U.S. Providing all this generation. We've struggled to build new dams. And I think all the big river systems were tamed, if you will, back when all the bigger dams were being created in the 40s and the 50s and such. But one of the biggest things we do is two areas that we do have growth today that's getting looked at an awful lot is non-power dams. These are dams that are there already. The dam is there. A lot of them are owned by the Corps of Engineers. They were built for navigational purposes. But when they were built, maybe they could have 20, 30, maybe 40 megawatts associated with them. And that just wasn't deemed economically beneficial at the time. So, and what's interesting is some of those non-power dams, they actually even have a plug. I say plug, right? Okay, it's a big piece of concrete, but it's where they could go in and put a hydro facility at some of those dams. So that's one of the big things it's getting looked at right now is adding power generation to dams that are already in place, i.e. non-power dams. And the other one is, of course, pump storage generation. We'll talk a lot about that, the needs for it, but that's where the opportunities really exist today. Now, if we really look at the R&D side of it and the cool stuff, that's what Kate alluded to was our MHK side of the house, the marine hydrokinetics, out there actually looking at stream flow, looking at tidal conditions, looking at things out in the ocean, wave type action. A lot of that research is going on. A lot actually startup type things are going in there. Holds a lot of promise, but you can imagine you're putting a power generating facility with moving parts and pieces, and you're taking it offshore out into the ocean, and then you're trying to get that power back onshore. You can just imagine, if that were a math problem, it would certainly have some second order differential equations that just got to be solved, right? This is a challenging problem, and we got some really smart people looking at that. So again, that's kind of where we are today, what the future is going to be. I do not have a crystal ball, but I do think hydropower is going to play a mix. It's been here a long time, and it's still greatly contributing to what we are trying to achieve out there. So anyway, just a few thoughts on the history, where hydropower's been and where it is going to. So let's click along here and look at hydropower in the energy in the energy mix, because there's always going to be a mix. We'll have people out there that want to trumpet one power source. I think that's a challenge. I think that's a challenge. We need our fossil type fuels, whatever that looks like. Gas, is certainly the natural gas is certainly looks really good. Price points are everybody's comfortable with. I remember years ago, probably around Y2K, I think the world about ended then. Maybe some of you were around. I know it was a stressful time for several people. But the gas markets really got crazy. I was at TVA then, and we had several gas plants under construction that we just had to abandon them because the price of gas went so crazy that it was no longer viable. So again, things come and go. Gas prices go up, prices go down. And so we look at this energy mix, we have all these different players. We have all the different types of renewable energies. It all comes into play. And hydropower, it's a part of that mix. It's a part of it. Solar, it's a part of it. Wind, it's a part of it. Coal, it's a part of it. Gas, it's a part. Batteries, they play a part. Energy storage in general, it all plays a part to keep our grid, functioning. All of us at our houses, we want that electricity and everybody's happy with it. But as soon as they start flipping that light switches and the light doesn't come on or their internet goes out, that's when everybody thinks, hey, wait a minute. Other than that, electricity is, it's very much taken advantage of, but it's when things get a little bit more challenging that people want to start complaining about it and maybe realize that, hey, we really need this power source. And like I say, here today, we're talking about hydropower, and we just want to stress the fact that we are clean, we are renewable, and it has some really unique energy storage potential there that we can get a lot more out of.
And Jay, just really quick,
Yeah.
As an undoubted aficionado myself, and I would assume many, if not all, on the call as well. When you put that list together, of course, there are other things that came to mind that you alluded to. One is domestic. One is reliable. No industry stays around over a century without dealing with the reliability considerations. But I think the other one that I've been thinking about most recently is it has nearly zero fuel cost volatility. And I think that that's an important point to make as we continue to talk about any one of these sources, right? Because I think that's really, really important to recognize. Just I'll leave it as maybe a comment or even a reflection for your thoughts, but those are things that have come to mind for me quite often.
Yeah, no, I really like the way you state that. I think what's interesting, I'll hear people if they want to put a knock on hydropower. Hey, you're not drought resistant. Oh, okay. You got me. If a drought comes along, but what's interesting to look at is we've had droughts over the years, and especially I think out in California, there was some studies done out there, even over the last several years, where they've had some pretty dry times, but it was their hydropower and the way they were able to utilize it and manage it. It really helped that drought. Their droughts have a lesser impact on the state than what they would have had without those hydropower plants there, without the control of that runoff coming out of the mountains. So, and again, as you note, the fact that completely domestic, right? It is right here. So that'll be great. Now, hey,
Julian
we
did
have.
post. Julian
Go
did
ahead.
post for you, and I can comment after you if you need. But he also said it's also he used the word weakly as a qualifier correlated with wind and solar. And I think there is some correlation and opportunity space there. But Jay, that is a comment that Julian made on the chat.
Yeah, Julian, I mean, that's such a great point. And that's what I've always said, even about hydropower, pump storage in particular, it's a multiplier of renewables. It is an absolute multiplier because, I mean, I think we can all agree the sun, at least where I live, does not shine in the middle of the night. It just doesn't. But during the day, there's places where the sun is shining like anything. And if we store that energy, we store it economically, efficiently, abundantly, and we pair it with some of our other resources. It just all that working hand in hand is the way we have to do it. Like I say, to try to say we're just going to have one resource, one generation resource, you can quickly see that's a real challenge. So just, a little bit of questions here to everybody else, thinking about your power, where does it come from? What sort of energy, carbon footprint is it got out there? Which energy sources are reliable and which energy sources have storage? So again, just some thought questions, if you will. And we're not going to, delve into them right now. But again, you just think where you live, what is the primary energy source there? Especially if you start thinking about, everybody wants to be very clean and renewable. How much do you have in again, your neck of the woods, wherever that is? And I think I wish we probably should have asked that question. I didn't write that down. We're seeing where everybody was particularly from, but I think we have a pretty good mix across the country from what I was hearing. I mean, I heard people from here in the south, clear to the northwest. I heard somebody from the northeast. I don't know if I heard anybody from the northeast.
Canada. We even have Canada.
We have Canada represented. Very good. One of my students is from Canada. We all speak fluent Canadian with him, but we won't get into that today. So again, where does hydropower fit into this mix? And like I said, as we think about the questions I have here on the screen right now, and we're here to learn about hydropower, and I can certainly speak to my time in the nuclear world, and people talk about small modular nuclear reactors. I thought, well, that's what we had on a submarine 30 years ago. But anyway, I'm glad to see maybe we're other people embracing them in other parts of the world too, and parts of our country. But anyway, we're talking about hydropower today. So I want to stay somewhat focused there. But a key thing we ended up saying is, look, hydropower is clean, it's renewable, and it provides incredible energy storage. And when I say energy storage, don't just think pump storage. A lot of our conventional hydro plants hold a lot of water behind them. I think about it, Pacific Gas and Electric and Southern California Edison, all their plants up there in the Sierra Nevadas. All they're doing is they have all these plants up there. They're not pump storage plants. Okay, Castaic is a pump storage plant, but it's not in the Sierra Nevadas, right? It's down there near LA. But anyway, they are capturing that runoff. They're capturing that snow, holding it in those large reservoirs, and slowly discharging it out over the course of the summer. And if they didn't do that, as soon as it started warming up, all that water out to the ocean, super duper quick, and it's not going to be there when we need it for all the other uses that they use it for. And a lot of that comes back to this idea of energy storage at our hydro plants. So just some real quick things to point out, some of the real plus parts about energy storage and hydropower in general. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, this idea of the energy mix. And I don't know that people always have this great appreciation for it, but we kind of got this like the Liberty here arms, right? You think about that in the law world. Well, we have this perfect balance that has to occur in the electrical generation side of things too. We always have to match the demand, what we as the customers are looking for, whether it be residential, industrial, whatever, that always has to perfectly match up with what's being generated. There can't be this mismatch. There's momentary mismatches, but a lot of your generations, we have all these different load control centers and ISOs and such, I guess, watching the grid, making sure everything in fact stays on at 60 hertz. It's interesting, the voltage can change, and we'll talk a little about voltage a little bit later on, but at our homes, we want to see that 240, 120 volts. That's pretty critical. But also equally as critical is the frequency. And it's the frequency that gets really affected if the load and the supply gets a really strong mismatch. And what I'm saying, if the load is a lot greater than the supply, we ended up dragging down the frequency. The frequency could, in fact, lower. And that's when that grid becomes unstable. I don't want to get into a lot with that. It would be interesting to be able to get a little chalkboard up and show some good little curves about how this all happens. But you guys get it. It's that same basic idea. If supply gets really, really high and the demand gets really low, well, again, at that point, the frequency starts increasing a whole lot. Well, again, our stuff, all of our things are designed and built around the 60 hertz frequency here in the US. And internationally, Brazil, over in Europe, there it's all based on 50 hertz. The point is they still have to maintain that. So this is where the idea of energy storage really gets important. And your grid operators out there, they know having a pump storage facility is transformational in the sense that, hey, look, if you have a big old nuclear plant that trips offline for some reason, some gas plant trips offline, you have this loss of generation all of a sudden. To be able to call up a pump storage facility and within a matter of minutes have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of megawatts ready to dispatch allows us to have a very stable grid, a very safe grid. And when I say the grid, that's what's connecting all of our homes. We're all plugging in to ultimately the grid. Our houses connect to that local power pole. That local power pole goes out to some substation somewhere. That substation goes to some high voltage transmission line somewhere. And that high voltage transmission line goes off to maybe another transmission line somewhere to another substation. But ultimately, they're going to end up at a generating facility. And it's that generating facility, whether it be a pump storage facility or another large gas plant, maybe some hydro plants along the river, they're all interconnected clear across the US. Texas is their own little entity, but nonetheless, we're all interconnected, sharing power from the East Coast to the West Coast, the North to the South, to make sure our grid is very stable and very safe, till we all have electricity when in fact we want it. I mean, even as an electrical engineer, I'm always amazed when there's some really big storm that comes through down here and you don't even see the electric blip. It just keeps running. It just tells you, the idea of how reliable our system is. So anyway, just want to give a little bit of appreciation for why we talk about storage so much, how it relates to the grid, how it relates to generation. So just talk about that just there for a few minutes. But again, a little bit class participation time, and I think my friends in the NHA world are going to help me with this, right? Kate, you ready to go on this one?
Hey Jay, it will be me who is
It's you.
helping you with this. Yes, yes,
Oh,
and yes.
perfect. Okay.
So I will be sharing my screen, and just so you know, it is 12:37. So we have about 8 minutes
That is
before.
perfect. This is just perfect timing. So what we have here, just a quick question for the group, talking about what percentage do you believe hydropower contributes to the U.S. electric grid? Now, again, I had several different areas I wanted to ask about, and maybe
And
we'll
Jay,
just
do
do
you want me
one
to
or
bring
two.
up the Mentimeter?
I want to ask this first question
Perfect.
then.
Perfect.
Energy storage. When thinking about energy storage, how much? All right, energy storage is from 0 to 100%. Now it's in that pretty big range, right? But how much of that is strictly supplied from the idea of hydropower? So say this would be a great time for you to take control, share your screen, and I'll push the. Oh, maybe you already did it. Oh no, it went away.
I have not, but you're starting to see some responses, just so you know. 20%, 96%, and 96%. And I'll be sharing screen, but just so you know, that's what's coming in so far on the chat.
Okay.
And can you guys see my Mentimeter screen? Anybody?
Yes.
Great. You also have 80%. So for those that see my screen, you'll see a QR code on the bottom left. And the QR code can be used so you can actually respond. And of course, I'll just give everybody a few seconds here to do that. And Jay, the first question that's here, and it may be out of order, is what are the potential benefits? You want to do the storage one, correct?
Yeah, I want to do the storage one if we could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second as I let folks continue to, of course, work through that.
Oh, they're putting it in the chat, and maybe that's
They're,
what we do today, but that's fine.
yep, they're trying to log in as we speak, and I am just going through the questions. Just bear with me. They're just a little bit out of order, Jay. So
Oh,
just
sorry about that, my friend.
it's okay. No worries. No worries. So I'm going to stop sharing just for 1 second. Apologies for that. We are getting some responses, Jay, just so you know, 96%, 80%, 20%. A variety of folks are logging in to the Mentimeter as we speak. So, okay, so I will hopefully successfully share again. And Jay, those are the responses. We're getting thumbs up. We have a
Okay.
variety of folks. I would say we have the majority of the distribution above that 90th percentile. Do you want me to show the correct answer?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's see it.
All right. 96% is the correct answer. So
Yes, that should be a really, I mean, a surprising number. But when it talks about grid scale, utility scale, energy storage, it's overwhelming pump storage. Pump storage came into play back in the 70s when we were looking to balance the nuclear plants, right? We had all these nuclear plants that were getting built. There was this big fear that during the nighttime, we're going to have this huge amount of generation because those of you had anything to do with nuclear power know you can't just turn those plants on and off. They have minimal control. They are base load plants. And so we're going to have all this generation that we need to do something with at night. And the thought was we would feed it all into these pump storage plants. Well, unfortunately, nuclear never take off. Thank you, 3MI. But anyway, we now have all these pump storage plants that are now solar and wind, and other people are learning to take advantage of. So that was one of my questions. But then we talked about renewable generation. That was the next question. Is this the percent that hydro plays in the renewable energy generation realm? So how much does hydropower add to renewable generation?
right. So
Again, just a
the
percentage
question is
number.
online, and we'll get you want to give folks a few minutes to pick
Yes,
some
let's get some
answers there.
responses. I see some coming in. Okay,
Yep.
that's great.
Yep. Thank you for those participating. We'll give folks another minute or so.
Is the question about percentage in the US or
I
general?
am sorry. Yes, let's talk US. US only. Yep. Should have been a little more clear there.
More responses coming in. We got about half of the folks. We have 8 out of the 16 folks
All right, so people are
coming
not
in.
playing with this, Jose. What can we do? Can we publicly
Coming-
shame or electrical
No, it's
shock?
good. I think we have 10 so far. So whenever you're ready, I will show the answer.
Yeah, let's go ahead and show the answer. Yep,
29%.
yep. Again, and you get it. 20 years ago that number would have been much higher, but nonetheless, you're getting a lot of wind, a lot of solar nowadays. But hydropower is still a significant player. It's a third of renewable generation is coming from hydropower. So that's a pretty big deal. Okay, I had one last question to ask you before we go on break.
There it is.
Yep, what percent of total electric generation is from hydropower? And this is US. I should have been more clear there. Yeah, you think of all the generation in the US, all the different energy sources, what might that look like? Yeah, looks like we're getting a handful of people giving us the numbers. I don't know if you guys maybe they've got their little books or maybe they're looking ahead. I'm not sure. Not sure.
All right, we
You
got
guys are
11
good.
participants, Jay. I'm going to show the answer.
Okay, perfect.
6%.
Okay.
Excellent. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. We're at 12:44.
12:44, perfect. I am going to share my screen one more time here. From current. Oh, I did it wrong. Again, I'm struggling with my lack of screens. Sharing, doing my little draft picture, part of it anyway. From current slide. Okay, yeah, and there it is as we went through it. And so again, pretty significant when you look at what hydropower is doing and how it contributes, how it plays into the overall scheme of electric power. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jose at this time, and I will advance to my next screen. And Jose, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Jay, and thank all of you for participating, especially at the end, still having so many of you voting with us and hanging in with us. We're now officially on our break. We will come back in exactly 30 minutes. Please try to be on time. I would like to get started as soon as